Boomers say it was just as hard buying a house for them as it is for us now. That's not even remotely true. Because when you actually look at the numbers, it's actually insane how much easier they had it. To prove it, I went back to 1990 to compare what it was like to buy a home back then compared to today. Not just the house prices, but the wages, repayments, and what it actually took to get into the market. And honestly, the differences are brutal. So in this video, I'm going to break down how much harder it is to buy a house now versus 1990. And spoiler alert, skipping avocado toast isn't going to fix this. And yes, boomers, I'm 100% aware that interest rates were significantly higher back in the 90s. But I'm also going to tell you why I'd absolutely take sky-high interest rates versus the market we have to buy into today. Let's get into it. Welcome to the 90s. MC Hammer can't touch this, and Bobby Hawke is smashing beers. And the median house cost is about $120,000, and the median Australian wage about $25K. For context, that's around about $300,000 and $62,000 respectively in today's dollars. Can you imagine being able to buy a house for $300K? But here's the one number that matters: price to income ratio. In 1990, the average Australian could buy a home for roughly 4 to 5 times their annual earnings. Today, depending on your city, that same ratio is 9 to 15 times your annual salary. But here's the way I actually like to think about this, because it removes all the noise around inflation and puts it on a much more human scale. How many hours of work does it take to buy the median Australian home? In 1990, you had to work about 17,000 hours to afford the median Australian home. If you consider the average worker works 40 hours a week, that equates to 8.5 years. Today, it's closer to 44,000 hours. That's 22 years of work where every single dollar you make goes towards a home. It doesn't take a genius to see that houses have grown way quicker than incomes, because this is where it starts to get interesting. And no, boomers, we're not talking about interest rates yet. That's coming, I promise. We need to talk about the thing that gives you the ability to buy a house in the first place, and that's the deposit, because the bank's not going to lend you anything if you don't have any cash. In 1990, a 20% deposit was around $25,000, or about a year's salary. Today, a 20% deposit, it's more like $200K. Over 2 full years of income before tax. I'm just going to illustrate quickly how absurd this has gotten. Let's say you're able to save 20% of your income, which is a challenge in itself in the current era. In 1990, it'd take approximately 5 years for a single person to save a house deposit. Today, 10 years plus. So before you even enter the market, you're a decade behind. Okay, boomers, it's time to talk about interest rates, because as Aunt Karen said, interest rates were so much higher when we bought our first house. Now, to be fair, Aunt Keza is 100% right. In 1990, interest rates were higher. In fact, a lot higher. You could expect to pay around about 17% interest, versus today where interest rates are around about 6%. That's near enough to 3 times different. So yes, mortgage repayments were still painful back in the 90s. But I will call out that interest rates did halve by 1993. But for now, we're just going to push that one to the side. Because boomers, there's one big key difference, and that's the mortgage burden. Even with high interest rates, mortgages were just so much smaller than they are today, and that makes a massive difference. Let me illustrate. I can lend you this 20-cent piece with 100% interest rate. Yes, the interest rate is high, but the total loan amount isn't. You only owe 40 cents. The same's true of a house. A 100K loan in 1990, you'd have repayments of about $1,450 a month, or roughly equivalent to $3,600 a month in today's money. An 800K loan at 6%, that's going to cost you $4,800 a month. That's $1,200 a month more, or a 33% increase like for like. And let's be fair, the house that you're likely buying is nothing like the one that your parents had. Chances are it's significantly smaller, further away, and probably worse built. So there's some shrinkflation, shitflation tax that isn't really reflected in these numbers. So today, even with lower interest rates, you're borrowing so much more, and the repayments eat up a bigger chunk of your income, all while you're stuck saving longer and paying more when you can finally buy. So, did the boomers have it easier? Absolutely yes, on pretty well every measurable metric. The price to income ratio has roughly doubled, and the deposit hurdle has tripled in terms of years of wages. And all of this has happened while rents are increasing at record rates and the cost of living is skyrocketing, meaning that saving in the first place is harder than it has ever been. This doesn't mean that boomers have had it absolutely on their own terms. Those 17% interest rates are nothing to laugh about. But the structural conditions, prices relative to wages, tax policy, supply constraints has created this compounding advantage that's continued to widen every decade since. So when the boomer in your life says, just work harder and stop buying coffee and avocado toast, tell them politely to get stuffed. It's just not the same game anymore, and the system's changed, and the numbers prove it. Now, I don't want to leave you feeling like the game's rigged and there's nothing you can do about it, because there are real strategies that do work in the current environment. They're just not the same strategies that your parents used. Option 1 is rent vesting, where you buy a house in a more affordable area and rent where you want to live. This gets you onto the property ladder sooner without having to sacrifice your lifestyle or location. Option 2 is the first home guarantee. This is where the federal government will allow you to buy your first home with just a 5% deposit. There's also no lender's mortgage insurance if you meet the qualifying criteria. This scheme cuts the deposit hurdle significantly. Option 3 is the first home super savers scheme. You can save up to $50,000 within your super account and withdraw it without any penalty. You get the tax advantages of super, allowing you to compound your returns more quickly. If you're a prospective first homeowner, it's a scheme you should 100% look into. Option 4 is to build wealth differently. For some people, especially buying in our most expensive capital cities, buying a property may not be the best first step you can make. Buying something like ETFs regularly through the ASX can be a terrific way to build wealth over time. This can allow you to enter the property market at a later date or build wealth without ever having to own property at all. And that's not giving up on the dream of home ownership, it's just adapting to the environment that you're living in. So I want to hear from you. Do you think it was way easier for boomers to buy, or is there more to this story than I'm making out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for Australian-based financial content. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.